Welcome to the 10th and final video on our series on the real business cycle model. In this video, we're going to talk about the full equilibrium system. This is a system in which we focus on the equilibrium of two markets, the labor market and the goods market. What we're finding here is how to represent the fact that for some given state of the economy, we have to find a given interest rate that implies a value of aggregate demand and aggregate supply that are equal, that give you total output in the economy, while at the same time having an equilibrium in the goods market, in which that interest rate induces a level of equilibrium labor that exactly coincides with what's needed to produce the equilibrium output. That coincidence is guaranteed by the way we built the aggregate supply curve. We did that 2 videos ago. Now, what happens if something happens to the economy? Say a change in TFP. If there is a change in current productivity, that's the variable Z, a number of graphs are going to move, a number of lines have to change. The first thing that we notice is the following. Because productivity is higher now, we know that labor demand is going to increase. Also, for any given value of labor, we're also going to produce more than we did before. That we cover when we were talking about aggregate supply, and we showed at that point that higher productivity it's going to end up expanding, shifting outwards the aggregate supply of the economy. Given that aggregate supply is now higher, you are going to end up producing more in equilibrium. But while you're doing it, you are also going to reduce the interest rate. So in equilibrium, we know that the interest rate has to go down from R1 to R2. That output has to increase. Because the interest rate is going down, we also know that consumption has to go up. We also know that investment has to go up. Okay, back to our problem with the labor market. Because the interest rate is going down, we also know that that's going to reduce labor supply. But we know that that reduction in labor supply has to be small relative to the initial shift towards higher labor. Because at the end of the day, we know there has to be higher output. And that's what we're seeing here in this graph with the second smaller arrow shifting back the labor supply. The final change we're going to consider is a change in future TFP. Now this is an interesting problem because nothing is happening today. The state of the economy today has not changed. There are just news that in the future TFP is going to be higher. Because TFP is going to be higher in the future, what we end up having is not a change in the aggregate supply of the economy. Remember, the production function has not changed today, but rather a change in the aggregate demand of the economy. The consumer knows that in the future, productivity is going to be higher, wages are going to be higher, profits are going to be higher, and hence, consumption today, it's going to be higher. Because consumption today is higher, you get this shift in the aggregate demand of the economy. The only way to restore equilibrium is to have higher output and higher interest rates. But then because interest rates are higher today, the consumer is willing to work more. That increase in labor supply is going to sustain the increase in output that we have. Remember, productivity has not changed. So the only way we can sustain that higher output is by working more. That's what's going to happen in equilibrium. Okay, with this example, we've seen how to manipulate the graphs that determine equilibrium in the economy to figure out what's happening to the equilibrium variables, what's happening to labor, to wages, to consumption, to investment, etc. With that, we finish this module of the class. Thanks.